Hi, hello there, and welcome back to Steamer with Steve. Today we're going to go through how the GST system works within Australia. So let's jump on in. So GST, basically it stands for something, and hopefully you've heard of this before. It stands for Goods and Services Tax. So this is a taxation system that was introduced into Australia pretty recently. And what happens here is you basically charge 10% on any goods and service that happened within our country. So before we jump into that, let's just do a little bit of a warm up. So just pause the video, have a go at those. So first one, 2% of 100 is 2, 9% of 30 is 2.7, 55% of 120 is 66, 4 out of 10 is 40%, 9 out of 50 is 18, and then 2 out of 40 is 0.5%. So why do you have GST? Well, there's a whole heap of different reasons. It's an indirect tax. So this means that individuals don't need to work out the tax. Small businesses and companies do. So they charge their clients, and then that gets paid straight to the government. So because the individual doesn't pay it directly, there's no record keeping of needing to know who paid what and where as it went along. The tax is 10% of the purchase price, and it's really simple to work out. You just multiply by 110%. So here was a quick little video that we watched in class showing how the taxation sort of came into play. I'll put a link in below if you want to watch it.
20 years ago came a reform so momentous it divided a nation.
It's going to number 15 for a pack of cigarettes and chewing gum. And I did that night.
The Goods and Services Tax was born through an unlikely partnership. But what can we do? How do we work? I was not going to allow this huge reform to go down the drain. It led to the ruin of an entire political party.
It's not simple objection.
It's a tale of power, betrayal, determination, and shrewd state. This is the story of how the GST came to be. By the time the GST took effect in 2000, the idea had been around for a generation.
The concept of subsidy tax on services.
The GST is a prize bag of smelly fish. It's time to fight back. The idea proved so unpopular, the GST was finished for good.
There's no way that...
And this was interesting.
Never ever, it's dead. Now, we chased our physician, and I was conscious of never ever, and they just felt that man up to do enough. Fed his own words back to it. Never ever bashed.
Well, I am going back on what I said. I accept that. And if the public is unhappy with my explanation for going back on it, then they can throw me out.
And they nearly did. John Howard lost the popular vote in the 1998 election, but despite the swing against him, the government ended up with a comfortable majority of seats in the lower house, and therefore the right to form government. By the middle of 1999, the Howard government was tantalisingly close to the finish line in its GST odyssey. It held 37 of the 76 seats in the Senate, too short of a majority. Its first order of business to court the independent Tasmanian crossbencher, Brian Harradine.
I'd hoped that Brian Harradine might support it, but Brian Harradine, who was thought to be leaning in the direction of it, he was the one that the government was wooing.
The question is whether I'm going to be a party to imposing an impersonal, indiscriminate tax on my children, my grandchildren, and their children for generations to come. I cannot. The first alternative was to forget about it, or wasn't going to do that. Secondly was to try and negotiate with the Democrats. And thirdly was to have another election. Well, I don't think the public wanted another election.
And so, facing a hostile Senate, John Howard and Peter Costello turned to the only other place they could, the 7 senators of the Australian Democrats, who until then campaigned against the GST.
I actually thought for a while myself, there's no way this will get passed because the gap is too huge, the red lines, the government's not coming anywhere near them. Those red lines just proved not to be so red or not to be there at all.
It was this hearing, John Howard and the Democrats' leader Meg Lees, that shocked people outside and even inside the party.
The Democrats were told firm on food, no retreat and no surrender.
Pat balanced power in basically had all the cards, and there's no political exit or gain for the Democrats supporting the Senate or anyone.
Within a few short weeks in June 1999, the Howard government had gone from blow to go. Its plan for a 10% goods and services tax, even agreeing to exclude certain essentials like basic food to shield people on lower incomes.
Concerned about all the carve-outs, but it was either or. Either you accepted the fundamental carve-out the Democrats insisted on, or you go the whole game away. Well, I wasn't in the business of giving a whole game away.
That's part of the weapon governments often use on small parties in the Senate, or any party in the Senate, is, we've got to pass this now and it's really urgent. It might have been urgent for them, but it wasn't, it didn't need to be urgent for the Democrats. But that's got to be something for all the people, so it must be an important matter.
On the 28th of June 1999, the GST went to a final vote.
There being 38 ayes, 30 noes, the matter is resolved in the affirmative.
Only 5 of the Democrats' 7 senators would back the government.
But I need to put on record my personal decision not to support the goods and services tax.
Well, in the final vote and a few other votes during the legislation and various amendments, I crossed the floor. Myself and Natasha Stott-Desk were across the floor and voted separately to the other 5 Democrat senators at the time.
A chicken walk. Thank you, Senator West. Out they go.
The day before it was introduced, it felt like Christmas Eve to me. I remember wandering around thinking, golly, how is all this going to go? We're going to get some Christmas presents, or it's going to be a big fizz-up. But it turned out, I think, in the long run, to have been accepted, but it was quite a struggle.
What's the break? What's it going to
It was a credit to the determination of John Howard that he persisted personally with the negotiations. I think Peter Costello had almost given up on it, to tell you the truth, but it was Howard that alone, in his determination to drive it through, made the concessions.
For the Democrats, the motto to keep the bastards honest would be forever tainted.
Meg Lees was prepared to negotiate. And the consequence for her, essentially her party was wiped out subsequently in elections. The Democrats lost all credibility.
I guess that's a classic case study in walking both sides of the street and ending up getting a giant truck come down and clobber you in the middle of it.
Achieved exactly what we set out to do. Our promise of the election campaign was to make this package fairer and greener.
You had to argue, first of all, that it was good for the nation, and you had to argue that it was fair. And that's something that I set out to do when I finally embarked upon what I facetiously called the Great Tax at Bedford.
Cool. So basically what would happen with the GST is you times it by 1.1, and then that would give you 10% of whatever the original value is. If you wanted to work out what the price was before GST was applied, instead of finding 10% and taking it away, which would never work, you divide by 1.1. So hopefully this little diagram helps. If you're going to work it out after GST, times by 1.1. If you want to work out before, you simply divide by 1.1. So have a quick challenge with this. If you can, don't use your calculator. Just pause the video. Okie dokie. So for the first one, 10%, you just have to shift it across one decimal place and you would have got $10. So then the price including GST is the 100 plus the 10, which gives you $110. The price, 10% of GST of $50 is $5, and then the final price is $55. If you had $150 with no GST, $15 worth of GST would be applied to make it $165 as the final price. For $5, you get 50 cents, which gives you $5.50. $1 would be 10 cents, so you get $1.10, and then 120 would be $12, so it'd be $132. So this final sales price includes the taxation that goes straight to the government. And that's used to build things like roads, hospitals, your police force, Medicare, all those different things are covered by that taxation. So some examples. If a cameraman is interested in home protection and decides to buy a set of hand grenades for $460, what's the final total price? Well, the final price is 110% of $460, which gives you $506. So just another explore. So if Jackson buys his favorite collectible Barbie for $7,500, what's his total final price? Do 110% times the $7,500, you get $8,250. The next example, if Jack pays $970 for his Dungeons and Dragons outfit, how much will it cost him initially to purchase his trendy threads? So this is pre-GST. How much would it be post-GST? Pre-GST, sorry. So the final price equals 110% times the cost price. So the cost price equals the final price divided by 110%. So 970 divided by 110 gives you $881.82. Notice that we didn't do 10% of 970 and take that away. So you don't do 970, take away $97. That will never work, just so that's very, very clear. So another system that was introduced was VAT, and that's the New Zealand version. And it's exactly the same as GST, but instead of 10%, they actually increased it to 15% of all their goods and services, which is a bit of interest. So just pause the video, have a go at these ones. Cool. So for the first one was $68, then $400, $55, $2.80, $35.70, and 57 cents. So the GST payable is just the tax. It's not the final price. The next one, so $770, $3,300, $495, $37.40, $62,370, and then $5.39. If the GST was $8, what was the original price? Would be $80, because 10% equals 8, and you just times it by 10. And the final advertisement of a shoe is $99. The GST of the price, including this, was the $9.90. And the final price to consumers is 10%. Calculate the pre-GST price. So this is where you do divide by 1.1. So 220 divided by 1.1 gives you 200, 60, 8,000, 110, $100, and then lastly 90 cents.
Yeah.
A little bit more of a problem-solving style question here. So just have a read and pause.
Yeah.
So a consumer electronics store is running a special promotion on various items. A customer is interested in buying a new laptop and a smartphone. If the customer buys both items together, their combined discount total reaches over $2,000. The store offers an additional 5% off the already discounted total before adding GST. The original prices are as followed: $1,500 and $800. The store offers a tiered discounted system on purchases before GST. So 10% if the total is between $500 and $1,000, 15% if the total is below between $1,000 and $2,000, and 20% discount if the total is over $2,000. After applying the appropriate discount, a 10% GST is added to the new subtotal. How much did they pay? So this is a multi-tiered question. So the first step is the laptop and the smart phone price is $1,500 and $800 respectively. So then the total price is $2,300, which then means it's over the $2,300. So the tiered discount is 20%. So to calculate the discounted amount, you do 2,300 times 20%, you get 460. So the subtotal after this is then $1,840. They then get the additional 5% discount on top of this already discount. So since it's already over the 2,000, the discount applies. So you get 1,840 times 5%, you get another $92 off. So then $92 off this amount gives you 1,748. And then calculate the GST on the final subtotal. You find 10% of the 1,748, and then you add it on, and then the final price is $1,922.80. Cool. So that's it from me. There is a Dr. Frost homework that's attached to this, I would highly recommend for you to have a crack at. So pretty much if you're taking anything away from this, GST is a simple indirect tax of 10% that's applied to all goods and services within inside of Australia. And then the easiest way to find the final price is you just times it by 1.1. But if you know the GST final price, including GST, and you want to find the ex-GST price or the price before GST was added, you simply divide by 1.1. So that's it from me. If you did enjoy this video, please do give us a like and subscribe, as it does help with that YouTube algorithm. And please allow any notifications as well so you can see when new content comes out. That's it from me. Thanks again. See you next time on Steam It with Steve. Adios.